Hi, I'm Joe Finsternis, and tonight I'm going to be talking to you about a movie called The Perfect Host. Now, this film is a dark comedy which follows a thief named John who's looking for a place where he can sort of hide out after he robs a bank and kind of recuperate. So he goes to this one guy's house and feeds him just a completely bullshit story, and he intends to rob the dude and steal him. He intends to rob the guy and kill him, but the tables end up being turned on him. As it turns out, he may have just picked the wrong place to rob, and this host might not be as all there as he seems. So, going into this movie, with the knowledge that it was supposed to be a dark comedy, I honestly wasn't expecting it to be all that funny. I mean, the concept of the home invasion genre being turned on its head certainly appealed to me a lot, and I was expecting at the very least to have a good time watching this, but it turns out that it is very funny. It made me laugh a lot more than I expected from beginning to end. It just starts off with this convenience store robbery that goes all fuck up, and, once you're introduced to the character of Warwick, the host that John is going to try to steal from, the actor who plays him is this guy named David Hyde Pierce, and to my understanding, he was previously one of the main stars on this sitcom called Frasier, which I've never watched before, and I need to get on that shit because the dude's hilarious. And I understand that some of you might call spoiler alert on the fact that I just, gave away the fact that he's going to turn the tables on John, but really, it made the film so much more hilarious for me knowing that he was a wolf in sheep's clothing and just seeing how he reacted to, John trying to intimidate him. And I know that I just used the phrase wolf in sheep's clothing in my Night of the Hunter review recently, and I don't mean to sound repetitive, but that's just the best way that I can describe his character. And this movie isn't exactly, going to be as fun as, say, Grabbers or One of the Dead, where it's nothing but jokes all the way through. It does keep the comedy going as the film goes on, I said from beginning to end, but at the same time, it's one of those films that walks the line between comedy and suspense. There are even going to be a couple of moments where it might disturb you, and to my great surprise, there was even a point where I felt pretty sorry for John's character. In fact, if you end up seeing this movie and you don't feel just the slightest hint of pity for this guy, I doubt that you're even human. And I love it when films are able to do this with a character where you're first introduced to them and you don't really care much about them. You might even be looking forward to seeing them die, but once it starts nearing those final moments, you end up wanting nothing more than to see them get out of this horrible situation. That right there is just the mark of a good storyteller, in my opinion. One more thing that I'd like to compliment this movie on is that it's got the best soundtrack that I've heard from a movie all month so far. I'm even more likely to buy this one than the one for Almost Human, particularly since it goes with a more memorable film. Now, I know that I do a lot of nitpicking in my reviews. As much as I praised Inside, I still had that one issue with it. Even Night of the Hunter, which is considered a classic, had a couple of flaws that I had to point out. But when a movie does have some sort of issue, I do need to address it because I try to be as unbiased as possible. It's not like I look for these things, it's just if I have a problem with something, I'm going to talk about it. So with that being said, one little problem that this movie had was, very late in the film, it started cutting to these two cops who were talking about the robbery that John participated in. And, I recently listened to the podcast from which Kevin Smith's Tusk originated from, and I haven't seen that movie yet, so don't ask me to review it. I'll talk about it later. And at one point, somebody says that one of the mistakes they should avoid is cutting to the outside world, because nobody gives a shit about what's going on out there. And that rule applies to this movie. Although I will admit the detective story did play a huge part in the film near the end, but like I said, it just started very late in the film, and it felt kind of abrupt by the time it got there. The other, minor flaw in the film was that I had a kind of a problem with the ending. There's a certain character who makes a certain plan, and you're supposed to buy into the idea that it'll work, but there's just a huge hole in said plan that I could not ignore. I'm not going to give it away right now, but overall, The Perfect Host is a nearly perfect film, with the exception of those two, flaws that I just mentioned. And if you have a morbid sense of humor, it comes highly recommended. Anyway, I'm going to go into spoiler territory now, so if you don't want to hear me talk about the ending, I would recommend clicking off of this video right now. I'll even give you a moment. I'm not sponsored. Anyway, for those of you who have stuck around and just don't give a shit about me spoiling the ending, if you haven't seen it, what happens is there's a point where you think that Warwick has gone ahead and killed John, but it turns out that he's just pretended to kill people in the past, and he does the same thing with Jonathan, and he takes a picture of him while he's unconscious so that he can live out this sick fantasy in his mind. And stuff happens. John ends up running to Mexico with some of the money that he robbed from the bank, and once he's down there, he sends this picture to one of the detectives from the subplot that I mentioned earlier, and it's very incriminating. It shows him and Warwick sitting together at the sort of twisted dinner party that Warwick was throwing, and the guy tells Warwick that he's going to search his house, but Warwick ends up smooth-talking him into coming over for dinner, and he tells him that he can search his house all he wants, and the guy... I can't talk today. And the guy accepts, and you're supposed to believe that Warwick's just going to be up to his old shenanigans again, and again, I can't talk. And you're supposed to believe that it's going to be the same thing over again, and I can buy the fact that Warwick might be able to do the same things with this guy, but if he does do the same shit that he did with Jonathan, where he lets him go in the end, he's not going to get away with it. I mean, it made sense for John to just leave without going to the police because he's a wanted criminal. But this dude is a cop. If Warwick fucks with him and then lets him go, he's going to go to jail. Anyway, that was the, problem I had with the plan at the end. Like I said, though, it is a great film overall. Anyway, that's all I've got to say about The Perfect Host. I hope you all have a good one.